Good evening. My name is Giovanni, and welcome to Face to Face. Tonight, I'm starting what is the first of a 5-part series I'm calling Purpose on Purpose. It's about living our God-given purpose with intention. And the reason for this series is that many of us feel dissatisfied with the direction of our lives. We often go aimlessly through the day without any plan or forethought, functioning reactively. And what that means is that our days bleed into each other without any meaningful marking of time. We wake up, we go to work, come home exhausted from our commute, eat dinner, surf the web or social media, watch television, then we go to bed only to wake up and do the same thing over again. That is not the life God intended for us. We were meant for more. In this first video, I'll be covering time management and the practices that lead us to use our time wisely. Are you ready? Let's get into it. So why should we make better use of our time? The Bible says in Psalm 90:12, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Now think about that. Teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. Did you ever think that making good use of your time could actually make you a wiser person? The first thing I'll say before I start talking strategy about time management is that wishing you had more time is actually a waste of time. So let's just agree to stop, okay? We cannot make more time by wishing we had more time. So what will actually give us more time during the day? The clock, if you've ever thought about this, the clock is the great equalizer, in the sense that we all get the same 24 hours in a day. Jesus had 24 hours. So did Paul the Apostle. Billy Graham had 24 hours in a day. Martin Luther and Martin Luther King had 24 hours. Essentially, every single person on earth gets 24 hours, not more, no less. To me, that's both encouraging because we all have the same amount of time, but it's also a little bit depressing, and I'll tell you why. All right, so I don't want to hear a collective clap back from you right now. Well, that was Jesus, he's the Son of God, of course. He can make great use of the 24 hours that he had. Or, the Apostle Paul was called, and so he was able to miraculously make the most of the time. I hear you. I get it. But realize this, that the distance between what they accomplished and what you and I can accomplish in a day is actually a lot shorter than you think. And it can make the difference between a life that's satisfying and a life that leaves you thinking, what's it all for? Let's break it down. On a 24-hour weekday, we have to sleep. That's around 8 hours a day. We need to work. That's another 8 hours already accounted for. If you commute to work, let's give it another hour and a half, possibly 2 hours during the commute. So once you add all of that time up, these are things you actually need to do. That's a total of about 16 hours that are accounted for. Now, if you work from home, obviously, you can take out the commute time, and that gets added to your total time that you'll have at the end. So 6 to 8 hours a day that you have left. That's about an entire workday's worth of time. In the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, Pastor John Mark Comer says that what we give our attention to is the person we become. Put another way, our lives are the sum total of what we give our attention to. And what we give our attention to are those things that are taking up our time. Think about that. What are the things that are making up the sum of your day? So we want to take a close look at that. What would your day, summarized in actions and in time, what would that say about you? It's sometimes really hard for us to acknowledge that what consumes our day might be an inordinate amount of time on social media, or surfing the web, or watching memes on YouTube, or gossiping, or fill in your favorite time waster of choice. Ultimately, we desire to use our time better because our lives should be congruent with the type of people God has called us to be. Our time ought to reflect our values. We cannot separate our use of time with our Christian value system. For you and I to make better use of our time, we have to take a hard look at how we are currently spending it. The Christian values that I think will be pertinent to this examination of time management include, first and foremost, our love of God. That means that your time ought to include prayer. It ought to include scripture reading, meditation. Another value is loving others. How are we spending time with our families, with our friends? How are we serving others? Our values include also temperance, which means moderation and self-restraint. And that is, if you do engage in things that might not be congruent with our Christian values, maybe you're watching too much television, that you will actually moderate that time, that you will exercise self-restraint when you're actually doing things that actually are not adding any value to you. Another important Christian value is patience. And patience is our ability to wait on God and to not expect things to happen right now. How about the value of simplicity? It's being content with the simple things. It's not necessarily desiring more stuff that we think will bring us happiness, but rather being satisfied with what we have and living a simple life. I love the next value, industriousness. And at first, I thought it was like working really hard, but it is more nuanced than that. Industriousness has this idea of persisting and being diligent about it. And then lastly, the Christian value of excellence. I love this idea because it reminds me of how God does things, but then also how Jesus does things. It says he did things with excellence. And that is how we should also do things, as though unto the Lord. On the flip side, these Christian values contrast very, very starkly with the kind of world in which we're living right now. A culture that says the self is at the center. It's all about me, me, me. There is very little regard for other people. Others are a means to an end, if you know what I mean. It's essentially, I need you, or I care about you because of what you might be able to do for me. It's very transactional, the types of relationships that the world values, instead of the service to others that the Christian call makes to us. The world doesn't believe in moderation and restraint. In fact, it's the complete opposite. The world tells us to get things fast and get them easy. We want to get rich quick. We want things to be quick. Everything is in a hurry. I want it and I want it now. That is how the world moves. This idea of working hard and persisting at something, again, it is not a value of the world. Our view of how things move in the kingdom, it's very countercultural. And so how we manage our time, how we manage our resources, how we prioritize our lives, it's 360 to how the world says we should live our lives. Lastly, the world doesn't value excellence. I mean, if you think about it, for example, everything is made for obsolescence, meaning that, the iPhone or any other product that we buy is made to become obsolete within a certain amount of time. And this is because they want us to continue to buy the new version of it, the new, iteration of it. Things are not done with excellence to last for years and years and years. It used to be that manufacturers, that companies took pride in their products lasting a long, long time. But that's not the case anymore. There is no sense of excellence in what is being made nowadays. Time is a gift from God. And in how we steward it, we can offer it back to God as an offering. Really something interesting that Pastor Miranda says in his book, Life by Design. He explains early on that at one point early in his pastoral ministry, he was feeling dissatisfied and frustrated with his low productivity and how he was using his time as a pastor. And he says that there was no overarching order or plan to his days or his week. And because he didn't plan in advance, he would just get up and improvise as the day progressed. Can you identify with that description? I think many of us still operate in this way. We don't plan and we don't have goals or vision for our lives. And so we allow things to happen to us rather than operating from a proactive framework. So the first thing that the pastor did, and I think, some of you might be familiar with this if you have already read his book, is that he created a schedule for himself. And it included his regular weekly activities and sermon preparation time. And it also included saying no to certain invitations during specific days of the week because he was using that time specifically for sermon planning. So sometimes as we get better and better at managing our time, it means that there are things that you and I need to say no to. For Pastor Miranda, that schedule became his compass. And in considering a weekly schedule, that is really how we need to look at it, to think of it as a compass. There's a beautiful sentence when Pastor Miranda is talking about time and how he took control of his time. And he says, we go from being puppets at the mercy of our circumstances to being authors of our own stories, empowered by the grace of Christ. I love that. So as I've been looking and reading and researching on time management to have this conversation with you, I don't know if you're familiar with something called time blocking. And so in time blocking, you're basically dividing your day into blocks of time, each dedicated to specific tasks or groups of tasks, okay? And so we're gonna take a look right now at what time blocking might look like. It's necessary when you're time blocking and when you're thinking about your day and your week, you want to plan ahead, you want to put in the things that you know you already need to do, and then use the calendar as your guide, as your compass for your week. So let's take a look at that now. If you will look on the screen, you'll see a weekly planner. And that encompasses Monday through Friday. We'll take a look at the weekend later. And blocks of time from 6 a.m. until around 11:30 p.m. When you're time blocking, as I have sort of done here, and this is by no means prescriptive, your schedule might look very different. The idea is that in time blocking, you are assigning blocks of time to specific things. So, for example, this is a person who works from 8:30 to 4:30, and then so they get up between 6 to 6:30 a.m. and they'll brush your teeth and do that kind of thing. I'm not being super detailed, but you get the sense more or less, between that half hour, in between that half hour, this is more or less what you're going to be doing. As I mentioned earlier, as I was talking about our values as Christians, the first value is loving God. And so in loving God, we want to give God the first fruits of our day. And so I recommend, and I know some people, say they pray and they read the Bible at the end of the day, but I would suggest to you to begin the day with your Bible reading and prayer. Right now at church, we're going through Bible in 1 year. And so, one of the readings per day takes between 15 and 20 minutes. So you could get your reading for the day, and then you could spend 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes praying to God and just, setting your day before Him. You never know, right, what's going to happen in the day. We never know what the day is going to throw at us once we step outside of our door. And so it's important to give God that time in the morning before we've even headed out to work. And so I've allotted between 7:30, you start to get ready, maybe you have breakfast, and then I've built in a commuting time, right? It's between an hour and a half, I think. Again, for those of you that don't work in an office and you're home, this is not going to apply to you. And so you are going to time block maybe something else. Maybe instead of using that hour and a half for commuting, maybe you'll do something creative. Maybe you'll work toward a goal. Maybe you'll read something that will, sort of expand your mind in some way, learn something new. And then once you are at work, as you can see, I haven't really categorized. So for example, if we take a look just at Monday, when we start our workday, some people start looking at emails immediately. But the recommendation is really not to look at emails the first thing in the morning when you get into work, is to block time for a project or for something that is that needs a lot of focus. Because for the majority of us, our morning time is our most productive time. And unfortunately, email frequently is not the most productive thing that we can do during the morning. And so some people block maybe 10 to 11 as their, checking email time. Or if you do have to check email the first thing you get into work, maybe you're just looking for specific emails that you need to reply to, and then the rest you leave for later in your morning or later in the afternoon after lunch. I know for some of you, maybe that's not feasible because that is the majority of your job. Maybe you're in the customer service industry and you have emails coming from people that need something from you. Again, the time blocking that you do with your own schedule will reflect your own tasks and activities. And so, and you can, time block your day. If you have a meeting from, 1 to 2, if you want to work on something specific, you'll time block, sometimes, especially if we have goals for our careers, we want to make sure that we are building that in also to our work schedule. For example, let's say you're trying to learn Excel, or you're trying to learn something that will give you, better pay and will make you more skilled in your job. You want to make sure you're putting that into your calendar, and you can talk to your manager or whoever it is that you report to about blocking time in your schedule so that you can continue to develop professionally. So these are some of the ways in which that you can use that work time to actually be moving further along in your career. Again, here the commute time, that is only if you have a commute coming back. But even that commute time, if you're taking the train or you're driving, that time could also be a time that you're using to either, listen to music, relax, listen to an audiobook, be learning as you are commuting, particularly, in the city of Boston where traffic is horrendous and it can be bumper to bumper. Doing something else rather than getting upset because you're not moving as fast as you should be is probably a very good use of your time if you can distract yourself, by learning something as you're commuting. Now, in the evening time, maybe like once you get home from work, again, these time blocks, they're just as an example, as, hypothetical scenarios that I've included in here, but your specific schedule is going to look different. The idea being that this block of time from the time you get home to when you go to bed at 10 o'clock, these are those hours that are left over once you've already accounted for sleeping, for working, and potentially commuting time. So what are you going to do with that time? If you are a parent, this will definitely look different because maybe you go home and you cook for your kids, and so you might not have as much time as we've calculated. You might not have those 6 to 8 hours. You might have 3 hours before you go to bed to engage in activities that are furthering your goals, that are furthering the vision that you have for yourself. And so this is more or less what a time-blocked calendar would look like. If you've never done it, I would highly recommend that you do this. It's basically what Pastor Miranda did. He knew which days he had to be visiting parishioners, which days he had to prepare for the sermons, which days he was going to take off. That's as important as the days in which he's working. Which day are you going to rest? And so that brings us, this idea of talking about rest, brings us to the discussion of Sabbath. Sabbath, a lot of people don't practice having a Sabbath day. And I would highly recommend that you Sabbath. And Sabbath doesn't necessarily have to look the same for everyone. Some people, like for their Sabbath to be all about spending time with God, reading scripture, sort of going off by themselves. That is how they like to honor God and how they like to Sabbath. But I would suggest to you that Sabbath, the way in which it can also be undertaken, it is this time to enjoy God's blessings. It is a time for family, for going to a park, for going to a walk, for napping, for meeting up with friends, watching a movie. Whatever it is that brings you refreshment, that is what the Sabbath is for. It says that when God rested, when he Sabbathed, after everything that he had made, he basically just sat back and enjoyed everything that he had made. And so for us to Sabbath is really to enjoy everything that God has given us, all of his blessings, like family, all of the things that we have that he has given to us. That's how we get to enjoy it. And we trust that we don't have to worry about working because he'll take care of providing for us. It is the ultimate way to trust God, is to Sabbath, to enjoy, to be refreshed, to enjoy the things that God has given us. That is also a wonderful way to Sabbath and a wonderful way to, love others, which is another one of our values, that we are spending time with our families, that we are being social with our friends and deepening those relationships. Those things are just as important as what we do during our workday. And so this time blocking is not prescriptive, but it just as a guideline to show you the way in which you can time block your own week, which requires a little bit of planning and thinking through even before you put this together. I would suggest, as you're thinking about time blocking, just put the things in there that you know you have to do during a week. And then begin to build the other things that you want to do. Maybe you're not spending enough time with your family. Maybe that's a good time to begin to time block, time spent with the kids, time spent with all of you as a family. Maybe that, as you're seeing your schedule fill up, well, maybe I want to learn something new. Let me build that into my schedule. One of the things that you will not see here is any time on social media. And what I will say to you is that, social media isn't all bad. One of the things that I realized when we were doing the creative series is that a lot of the creatives who were here learned how to, the videographer learned how to do a lot of the videography through YouTube videos. So there's a lot of good stuff that you can learn from social media. But it's that mindless scrolling. But maybe you want to be on Facebook and you want to look at what your family's doing or your friends. What I would say is time block it. Give yourself a specific amount of time that you are going to, get on Facebook or get on Instagram, and honor the time and don't go beyond it. And I would recommend maybe no more than once a week. Maybe for a half hour, you go on social media just to catch up and see what, friends and family are doing, particularly those, friends and family that don't live near you. But it's that mindless kind of scrolling that all of a sudden we realize an hour and a half has gone by with us watching videos that haven't added any value to our life. And so and I know this is not easy, it's a skill, something that we have to learn. But I would recommend that you start time blocking. It is a great way to get the most use of our time and to honor God with what He has given to us. So the last thing I'll say about time blocking is that you can use the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique, I won't go into how it got its name, But what it essentially means is that you use a clock, and for 25 minutes, you are focusing on one specific task, and then do not do anything else other than that task for 25 minutes. And then once the clock goes off, that you're done with your 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and then you go back to that task for another 25 minutes. You'll realize that if you're able to focus for 25 minutes, you will be surprised at how much you can accomplish. I've used the Pomodoro technique now. It's kind of a new way for me to stay focused on my tasks, but I'm just so surprised how much I'm able to get done. And so if you're in the flow after the 25 minutes go off and you want to continue working, you can definitely do that. And then once the 50 minutes are up, you can take a 10-minute break. But it is a wonderful way to just keep you focused, because if you're like me and I'm working on something, I'll go and check my email, or I'll think of something and then I'll go on a website and check that thing, or I'll get up. Oh, all of a sudden I need a drink of water. But using that clock, it's only 25 minutes, and that's the time frame that you need to focus on. It's actually very, very effective way, using time blocking and using the Pomodoro technique. So some tools that you can use. If you're a digital person, you can use a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar. If you have get a free Microsoft account, these are just free ways for you to use a digital calendar and begin to time block. And all of these things are also available on your smartphone, so they can be with you at all times when you're going, just checking your schedule. Okay, what do I have to do from this time to this time? And everything is set in your schedule of how your day is going to go. The other way that you can, another tool that you can use is a paper planner. And so if you are not currently using a paper planner but think that might be the best method for you, you can buy one at either Staples or on Amazon, as long as they have, a weekly schedule or even a daily schedule where you're able to time block your days. Anything that allows you to do that, I would highly recommend. I myself use a combination of both. I have my Google Calendar, which I live by, but I also use a paper planner. And so I like using my paper planner because it kind of gives me, and I can, carry it with me. I don't need an internet connection for my paper planner. There are some things I only put in my Google Calendar, and there are some things I only put in my paper planner. But that's, I've been able to figure out how to work it myself. And you may find that you prefer fully digital, and that's okay. And so, it's whatever works for you to be able to honor the things that are in your calendar when you actually put them in. I know I've given you a lot to think about in time management and organizing your schedule so that you are honoring God. But I know that if you ask God to help you, He is a planner par excellence, and He will help you to honor Him with your time. Next week, we are going to be talking about prioritizing. What does that mean? It means looking at those tasks and deciding whether they belong in your calendar in the first place. If you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions for what you'd like to hear next time we meet, please email me at facetofaceprogram@gmail.com. That's FACETOFACE program@gmail.com. Have a great rest of your week, and may it be productive and God honoring. See you next time.